An example of this is, let's say I bought a $300,000 car, right? I've paid $300,000 for it. No matter how horrible it is, I want to try my best to believe that it's the greatest car that I've, ever invested in. That is cognitive dissonance, right? It applies to shopping a lot. The question here is, from a first century Jew's perspective, is this a reasonable explanation? Now, what were the first century Jews expecting of Jesus in the first place? They were expecting a Messiah that would free them politically, a strong leader that maybe would free them from the Roman rule, make the nation of Israel powerful again, right? And what happened was completely out of their expectation. They saw their Messiah crucified horrifically, naked on the cross, died, and was buried. So from a first century Jew's perspective, would they, after have seen that horrific passion story of Jesus being crucified and dying, still want badly to believe in Jesus? Or would they have been completely distraught and disappointed and go back to their daily lives, right? The disciples went back fishing, remember? So I would argue that after seeing Jesus die horrifically on the cross and being buried and dead, there was not really a motivation for them to want to believe in a dead Messiah. So cognitive dissonance seems quite weak over here, right? Now, for the sake of argument, let me grant that, okay, Peter maybe had cognitive dissonance. Now, Peter, I consider the friend of skeptics. They love Peter. Why? Because Peter is the one with the guilty conscience, right? He denied Jesus 3 times. So he felt bad, and now he wanted to make up for it. So he had cognitive dissonance. Fine. For the sake of argument, let's just say Peter had cognitive dissonance. Now, would one disciple alone be able to convince the others and allow Christianity to expand the way it did to what it is today? I think that's pretty difficult. Again, if I grant, for the sake of argument, that, okay, I'll give you more disciples, right? Take more disciples, a few of them, many of them had cognitive dissonance, fine. Now you still have 2 disciples or apostles that you have to explain. One is Paul and the other is James, the brother of Jesus. Now these 2 apostles became Christians and they died for their faith. And they had no reason to believe or want to believe that Jesus was God. So how do we explain the conversion of these 2 individuals, right? So while Peter, the friend of skeptics, Paul and James always creates a problem for these alternative theories because they had no reasons to believe. In fact, they were skeptics themselves. Paul himself was persecuting Christians, right? So cognitive dissonance does seem to pale in comparison to the empty tomb and Jesus's appearances. Now, the second one that I'll explore is what we call a new experience of grace. This one is interesting. The first Christians, particularly Peter again, had a wonderful experience of grace and forgiveness, of seeing and enlightenment, which can be described as conversion. This was not originally anything to do either with an empty tomb or with any of the appearances in an objectivizing way. Basically, after Peter became a Christian, he started to have an inner sense of peace and joy. And this was what he tried to proliferate, and others start to feel the same way. And that was how Christianity started. Okay. Again, putting the lens on of a first century Jew, their expectation of a Messiah versus the dead Messiah that happened, would they have had the mindset or the mental condition to have this experience of grace? It does seem a bit odd, right? That's why Peter was called out here. Again, he's the one with the guilty conscience. Maybe he had that. Maybe he had that. Again, Would Peter alone be able to proliferate the faith? Very challenging, right? And actually, this theory, if you understand it properly, assumes that they became Christians first before they had these experiences, right? And because they became Christians, this story of Jesus's resurrection started to spread. And even though it did not happen, people started to believe it was true, right? So that was the theory and how it happened. But again, you come to the problem with Paul and James, who would have no reason to want to have this, no reason to have this new experience of grace, right? And this theory suggests that this experience comes after they became Christians. So we have to first explain how they even in the first place became Christians before they can have this experience, right? So again, this is not a very strong alternative theory.